Why will the Leaning Tower of Pisa never fall? Some buildings in the world are famous due to their distinctive features. Some are renowned for their grandeur, some for their lengthy construction periods, and others for their unparalleled uniqueness. The Leaning Tower of Pisa, for instance, has tilted 3.5 meters yet still stands firm on the ground, which is truly miraculous. The construction of the Leaning Tower of Pisa began almost 1,000 years ago, and it has been leaning ever since its inception. What has kept it standing, defying the limits of science? The story begins from the day it broke ground. The Pisa city government wanted to build a tall commemorative tower in the city and enlisted the help of the famous Italian architect Bernardo Pisano. Pisano, inspired to surprise the world, chose an unconventional round foundation instead of the usual square one, aiming to build a cylindrical tower. His idea drew crowds eager to see how a round tower would be constructed. To avoid interference and ensure safety, Pisano persuaded the onlookers to leave and then worked tirelessly, rapidly completing the third story of the tower. However, like a person sobering up from a drunken stupor, Pisano realized overnight that the tower was leaning. Despite all his efforts, he couldn't stop the tilt. Facing the risk of the tower collapsing halfway through construction, Pisano was overwhelmed and halted the project, citing an excuse. The city government had no choice but to wait about a century before inviting a second architect, Giovanni di Simone, to the now overgrown site. After a brief inspection, Simone confidently declared, "Leave it to me. I can definitely straighten the tower," but he soon realized he had overpromised and couldn't correct the tilt. In 1284, Simone died in a war, relieved of his burden. 70 years later, the tower was still only half built, and the city government grew anxious. They offered a substantial reward to anyone who could complete the tower. Attracted by the reward, engineer Tommaso Pisano studied the tower extensively and concluded that while the tower would continue to lean, he could use his ingenuity to prevent it from collapsing. The Italians, excited by this assurance, began celebrating their unique tower rather than seeing its lean as a problem. The Leaning Tower of Pisa became a famous Italian landmark, and in 1591, Galileo conducted his renowned experiment with 2 iron balls from its top, further enhancing its fame. At the end of the 19th century, another architect attempted to correct the tilt by excavating around the tower. Instead, this made the tilt worse. By the 1990s, the tower seemed like an elderly person nearing the end of life, prompting the city government to enclose it with high walls and call in numerous experts to analyze the cause of its tilt. Experts found that the tower was built on a layer of water-saturated clay. The heavy tower compressed the soil, causing changes in the ground and continuous tilting. Digging and pouring concrete had been somewhat effective, but earlier attempts failed due to a lack of proper techniques. Thus, experts excavated soil from the north side of the foundation to shift the center of gravity back north. This project took 10 years but successfully halted the further tilting of the tower. The Leaning Tower of Pisa was reopened to the public, though the government strictly limits daily visitor numbers to protect it. So, if you wish to see this iconic tower, make sure to plan your visit early.